All right, CNT125, Chapter 10, we're talking risk management in this chapter. So we're going to look at people, technologies, malware, those kinds of things on the security side of things, and then we'll also talk how we prevent some of these intrusions, hardening, malware, and then policies and things for companies. So let's dig in. First thing they mention is security risks. We need to be aware of some terms. One is data breach. Someone gains unauthorized access to your network. And when that happens, there is two questions. What is at risk? So what was at risk if somebody were to compromise? And what do I stand to lose if it is stolen, damaged, or eradicated? What do I stand to lose if they acquire blah data? Maybe it's people's names, maybe it's people's birthdays, maybe it's people's social security numbers, maybe it's people's credit card numbers. What do I stand to lose if that data is stolen, damaged, or deleted, that sort of thing. So those become two fundamental questions for whatever facility you're working at when there is a data breach. What is at risk, and what do I stand to lose? In some cases, you're going to lose lots of business. Some cases, you might even have lawsuits because of you weren't doing your due diligence to protect said data. So the original word for the meaning hacker was someone that was basically a computer tinkerer and then really started mastering kind of the workings and the ins and outs of computers. It was actually a compliment reflecting somebody's, awesome computer skills. Today, unfortunately, it has a connotation of somebody that's gaining unauthorized access to a network, to a system, to a server, etc. So by today, the term hacker is a negative connotation. Somebody that's actually trying to do compromise and or do damage, if you will. There is actually a couple different types of hackers. White hat hacker. This goes back to like the old Western movies where the good guys wore the white cowboy hats and the bad guys wore the black cowboy hats. That's kind of where this is coming from. But your white hat hacker is your ethical hacker, and their goal is to really identify what vulnerabilities you have. So now you have a list of things you need to work on to try to patch up, fix, plug, block, filter, etc. A black hat hacker is one that's actually trying to compromise and extract data, maybe steal data, compromise privacy, maybe even cause damage to equipment, etc. These are the ones that are making the news in the news stories. Your gray hat hacker, these kind of sit in the middle. They do have a code of ethics. They might engage in illegal activity, but it's really the intent is to educate and assist. So sometimes these are people that are getting a hold of data and releasing it to the public kind of thing. It's one of those, it's in that gray area of like, well, technically it was illegal, but they technically handed everything over. So it really hits that gray area of was it good or bad. Those would be your gray hat hackers. So a couple terms when we deal with security risks. One is vulnerability, a weakness of a system, process, or architecture of a network, a network architecture, that sort of thing. What is that? Maybe the data closet doors are left unlocked or propped open or something like that. That would be a vulnerability in the architecture. But a system, vulnerability in a system or a process might be we don't do updates until, a week after the new update comes out and we've had time to test. Well, there's a week time frame where you could be vulnerable to something. An exploit is taking advantage of a vulnerability. So let's say a company doesn't do updates for a week. A new update comes along and they take a week to test it. During that time frame, somebody could potentially exploit a security flaw, security hole in an operating system that has not been updated or patched. A zero-day exploit or zero-day attack is when somebody takes advantage of a undiscovered software vulnerability before people even know about it. So maybe they discover that a certain piece of a blah operating system I can wiggle through if I use blah protocol or blah port. And it's before anybody knows, even before the software designer knows it's there and knows to write a update or a patch to fix it. That'd be a zero-day exploit or a zero-day attack. So when we talk risks, we have to talk people risks. And actually the chapter kind of divides this up into a couple areas. People, technology, malware, that sort of thing. So the first area they talk about is people risks. And they have a stat in here, And again, even if this stat is embellished a little bit, it's still worthwhile to note. Half of all security breaches are because of human errors, ignorance, omissions, etc. Yeah, we're human. We make mistakes. So a lot of the security breaches are because of that. I'll get to that Monday. I'm going away for the weekend, so I'll get that Monday. Well, during the weekend, maybe that thing not being updated is what causes a problem. I'm just giving an example there. Easiest way to circumvent network traffic or network security is take advantage of that human error. Take advantage of the human condition of we do make errors, we do make mistakes, and this is a common method for intruders to gain access to. We're all aware of getting an email asking you to reset your password, and it's a fake email. It's not meant to be real. It's meant to look real, but it really has people clicking on a link that is trying to gain information from them. We're all aware of that happens. If we receive phone calls, same thing. Somebody calling is trying to get information from people that aren't aware or not paying attention. And this comes into the category of what they call social engineering, taking advantage of the human condition, taking advantage of the we do make errors, and also taking advantage of many people like to help. Many people like to help try to fix a problem. So if somebody's crafty enough, they can call and get information from a person that's just trying to be helpful, and that's the information they needed to be able to go one step further into compromising blah network or building or door or whatever. The next page here, I put an example of probably one of the best examples of people that kind of mastered social engineering. And this was in the early days of computer hacking, back in the days of landline phones. Kevin Mitnick was kind of a pro at this social engineering thing. There's a book here, Ghost in the Wires, one of his books. He has a couple books. This is one of his books, Ghost in the Wires. Anybody doing network security or interested in networking security, this would be a fantastic read, because you can start getting in the mind of somebody that is a master in social engineering. Individuals like this, they would, in these days, they would dig through dumpsters and find information that people were getting rid of. They would learn enough that they would be able to call a number, act like they were an employee, provide, A, B, and C information. Hey, I'm down at the so-and-so site. I'm trying to get a hold of so-and-so. This is the number I have for him. I don't seem to be reaching him. Do you have their number? And all of a sudden, you're getting an employee in a company providing a phone number that's not public information to somebody that's trying to hack in. Now that they have that phone number, they call that person and pose as another person. And again, they're slowly working their way in to get the information they need. In this book, Kevin talks about doing those things, and literally that process of digging a dumpster, getting numbers, calling somebody, getting a piece of information, calling another person, getting a piece of information, where eventually they were literally walking in a locked door of a company, walking into a data closet, pulling a manual off the shelf, and walking out. So social engineering is a significant, as you see here, significant cause for security breaches. So again, this is a really interesting read for anybody that has genuine interest in security. Kevin Mitnick was kind of a pro in the social engineering thing. And it's one of those, I'm not celebrating the guy. I kind of like half want to do a high five, and the other half I want to get angry at the guy. I'll put it that way. Where it's like, wow, amazing ability to think, outside the box, but at the same time, it's like, seriously, dude, you're breaking in, you're causing security problems. So yeah, I kind of want to do the high five, but at the same time, want to have the guy locked up, kind of thing. So okay. So common types of social engineering are these kind of things here. We're all aware of phishing. We're all aware, I threw a couple examples in here of phishing emails, getting something that looks close to legit, and they're getting people to click on a link and they plug in information. They plug in their account. They act like they're redoing their account. And really, the entity on that side is trying to siphon that information off. And they're preying on people that, maybe not paying attention, not aware. So in a company, you would need to educate your employees against this. Baiting. Malware-infected file, malware-infected USB drive, that sort of thing that attacker uses to access computers, data, drive, etc. This was a research study. It was done a handful of years ago, so it's a little dated. However, they littered a campus with nearly 300 USB drives, and they were loaded with files when open. Told researchers somebody had found the drive and opened something. So they weren't actually trying to cause harm. They were just trying to track of the 300 drives that were out there. Almost all of them were picked up. And almost half the people actually plugged them in to see what was on there. And again, most people are trying to be helpful. They're going to plug it in and be like, well, I want to see who this belongs to because I want to return it to them. It's their research paper. I'm sure they're going to be missing, and I'm sure they're going to be sad they missed it. So a lot of people are actually trying to be helpful, but in a company, you don't want your employees doing this. So again, you'll need to educate people against this kind of scenario. And in many places, USB drive ports and those sort of things are shut off so that employees cannot plug this kind of thing in their work computer, their company computer. Quid pro quo. You offer something in return for something else. Whether it be money or tickets to a game, that sort of thing, hoping that the person is going to offer up the piece of information you need. Quid pro quo. Again, you have to educate people, and it's company policy to not accept blah. Don't provide information to blah, that sort of thing. Tailgating. Tailgating, literally following somebody into a secure area without the person knowing. So let's say somebody uses their badge to swipe into a building, and that door just happens to have a really slow door closer on it. It closes very slowly. While the person swipes in, goes in, somebody comes around the corner behind them and sneaks in behind through that door that's still closing without the original person even knowing that's going on. Yeah. So this again, educating people on when you go through the door, make sure the door closes behind you and nobody's coming after you. Piggybacking is that kind of concept, but taking it up a notch. Acting like you're a delivery person holding the box going, hey, can you hold the door for me? Somebody swipes in to go in the building, you're like, hey, can you hold the door for me? And again, most people want to be helpful and will do that. They're like, oh, here you go, I'll hold the door for you. Yeah, it looks heavy. And now you've just let somebody that's not supposed to be there into a building. And maybe that's just the first step, but that's the step they need to get to the next step. So piggyback and looking out for literally holding the door for somebody that does not belong in there. Shoulder surfing. Peeking over somebody's shoulder while they're logging in or doing something, plugging in an account, plugging in a password, etc. Some people are very guilty of like blatantly doing that or leaning over or peeking over, that sort of thing. All of these things, I'll scroll back here at the beginning, all of these things you would need to educate your employees in your company of trying to avoid or look out for. So these are all common people risks that you could have happen in a company. The most important defense to all this is employee training. Training your employees and training your users about the latest scams and ways to avoid these scams. Insider threat. Insider threat is someone who was trusted by the organization, maybe a former employee, maybe a previous contractor, maybe an associate, that has access to some level of information in that company. Maybe they're disgruntled, maybe they got fired, maybe they lost the contract, maybe they lost the ability to be a vendor for. Now they pose a big risk because they have some level of access or privilege in the company, some level of knowledge, and can potentially do harm too. That would be your insider threat. There's many stories of people being disgruntled workers, changing passwords, and etc., and locking people out. Doing these kind of things, background checks. Actually, I'll come back in the next podcast and continue here so we don't run out of time.